time to look at the stories making headlines in Nigerian newspapers today. And I have journalist Dario Dufowokan here with me in the studio. Dario, good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Great. And I have also joining me managing editor, the Avalon Daily, Ayodele Adil on Skype. Ayodele, good morning. Okay, he's going to join us as we get along. Okay, let's begin with the Daily Times. Daily Times newspaper says China's sweet loans stoke debt trap warnings. China's sweet loans stoke debt trap warnings. All right, that's the Daily Times. Leadership newspaper is next now, and it says North Central Intelligentsia regroup in Abuja, form North Central People's Forum. And there are some writers there to explain further. Says that Useni, Aduku, Mantu, Ndanusa, Ibetu, Bolaji, others in attendance, and governors endorse forum and to focus on unity, security, wealth creation, politics. Observe 1 minute silence for the late Awoni, Saraki, Lar, and Waku. Pay tribute to General Wushishi. All right, all that's from the North Central. Okay, that's the leadership newspaper. Daily Trust is next now. Daily Trust says 264 Nigerians commit suicide in 4 years. It's really troubling. And depression, job losses, family crisis top the reasons why. And 800,000 die globally through self-murder. WHO is revealing this. And COVID-19 fuels suicide cases in 2020. And government parent clerics key to ending suicide. We'll be talking about this as we open the discussion. All right, let's get to Business Day now. It says outrage as CBN gives 4 foreign firms a nod to import maize. That's Business Day. Blueprint is the next one, and it says fresh deal as striking doctors get 9 billion naira added allowances, may call off strike today, and 20 billion naira already paid to health workers. And that's the Blueprint. National economy is next, and it says the PMB inaugurates committee to lead Nigeria's Agenda 2050 as Vision 2020 ERGP elapse. That's national economy. All right, let's go to News Direct now. News Direct is the last one we're seeing, and it says subsidy removal, condensate, private refineries to provide cheaper petrol. The GMD of NNPC, Mele Kyari, is saying this. Okay, those are some of the headlines on the papers this morning. Okay, we have Ayodele Adil, managing editor of Avalon Daily, joining us on Skype now. Ayodele, it's good to have you. It's good to see you.
Good morning, Mike.
Great.
Thanks for having me.
All right, you're welcome. Now let's begin. Let's start with the story on the front page of the Daily Trust. Would interest Nigerians and interest all of us, especially seeing today as the World Suicide Prevention Day. And it says that 264 Nigerians commit suicide in 4 years. Okay, let me start with you, Ayodele, on this. One of the headlines there said the depression, job losses, and family crisis top the reasons why suicide cases are rising in Nigeria. What do you say to this?
I mean, I'm not surprised that you see those kind of numbers coming out of Nigeria. We used to be somewhat the happiest people in the world. But in recent times, in the last few decades, poverty has so soared in Nigeria that it's beginning to break the spirits of Nigerians. Many Nigerians can hardly feed. Many Nigerians can hardly make ends meet. In fact, there's a data from the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics that showed that about 40 million Nigerians survive on 11,000 naira per month. Now, those are the 40 million Nigerians with jobs. You have another 20 million plus Nigerians who do not have jobs at all. So the poverty in this country is so high, and it's so dangerous that people have no other option than to take their lives when they cannot make basic end meet. The cost of food is going so high. The cost of transportation has hit the roof. Now they have to pay higher for electricity. They have to pay higher for petrol. There's basically nothing available in terms of social security for the poor. in our country. And so most of them have no other option but to take down their lives, and how painfully so. So the numbers don't surprise me. If anything, I think it's even being underreported.
All right. Now, Dari, I was asking a neuropsychiatrist earlier on. We used to have family support systems where, because our lives are communal lives, you know, we all have that uncle, brother here, cousins, parents, and all of that. How is that helping or not helping right now?
Yeah, well, first we must admit the fact that these are very terrible times, not just for us as a country, Nigeria, but globally. And if you look at the events of the last 10 years, either locally or internationally, gradually there has been this shift from the we mantra, we, to the I mantra. How? You want to be of support to people only after you are able to take care of yourself, to ensure that your own problems are limited. But over the years, some 10 years ago, it was declared that Nigerians are among the happiest people in the world. But today, I doubt if anybody will want to tell us that, or if we would even want to listen to that. So if the uncle, the aunt, the cousin is grappling with difficulties, how will such people be able to come to the aid of others? So it is a problem with our social structure. The communal setting is still there, but the support system to make that commonality work is gradually fading away.
Everybody is struggling to survive.
Practically.
All right.
On the individual basis, there are too many troubles to grapple with. So much so that even if you look at some situation, communities in the days of old, there will be bad roads are not motorable, and people come together and say, oh, let's contribute and do it. You are finding less and less of that on a daily basis because the family's heads, the fathers or the breadwinners you want to approach to support that communal effort are not finding life easy. So the power to support the community, the power to look at your neighbor and say, I don't think he's faring well, let's ask him questions, is gradually leaving us. And in a society where that prevails, suicide will be rampant. I'm surprised they are saying
being individualistic.
We are just becoming
approach to everything. Just
it's about I. The only thing that made life easy for the less privileged, for the indigent in the years past, was the fact that there were always some shoulders to lean on. Gradually, those shoulders are sagging. And if a soldier is sagging, you wouldn't want to go there and lean. You already have an idea that, oh, this man too is not finding it easy. So to have that huge figure of suicide is a pointer to us that we are gradually losing it as a society.
All right. Now, let me bring Ayodele back in here. Ayodele, the point there is, as the figures, at least from the report and statistics that are coming, it seems like the figures are increasing gradually. But as it is right now, some are saying that in the Nigeria that everyone is complaining that this is not working and suicide numbers are going up, it's still the same Nigeria that some are making it big and becoming the stars that they want to become, or whatever they want to become. They hustle, that, if we have to use that word. So others are saying it could be out of, instead of seeing it as out of frustration, it could be out of cowardice to commit suicide. What do you say to this complex explanation?
I mean, I hear this a lot when people say that in this same country, people are making it. You don't want to build a country or a system on random numbers, because the people who are making it are the exception and not the rule. What you want to do is to create a system where every citizen has a fair chance at living a decent life, where the majority of your citizens can afford a certain standard of living that they do not need to beg, borrow, or steal. Now, if you build a system wherein people have to get successful by random events or happenstances, or by their proximity to power, or their proximity to people in power, then you have a broken system. And that's what we have in this country. You have a system wherein it is the people who are closest to power who are able to succeed or live a very successful life. And that is not sustainable. That is not sustainable. Every Nigerian deserves a chance. You look across the world and you see that in certain countries, when some people get admission into law school, or they get admission into medical school, or they get admission into engineering, their families throw a party. You know why? Because there's a guarantee that after that 4 years in school, they are going to get a decent job and their life will turn around for good. The reverse is the case here in Nigeria. You have students graduating from law school, you have students graduating from engineering school to come back home and fry corn with their mother. The same corn that the mother used sweat, tears, and blood to send the child to school, thinking that when this child graduates, he's going to lift this family out of this penury. The child comes back to sell corn with the mother. That is the situation we have ourselves in this country. That's why it's unsustainable. So something definitely has to give. We need to ensure that the policies that we implement in this country are useful for the larger and the greater amount of people, not for a select few who have access to the corridors of power, who exploit that access, and who make billions at the expense of the millions of poor Nigerians across the country. I have no problems with people making billions, but I have a problem wherein you have few or several communities in this country with single billionaires and a lot and millions of poor people across. That is not a sustainable system. And here you go, Mike. The reason why you see certain companies attempting to leave Nigeria is not necessarily because there are bad policies that are swallowing these companies up. It is because Nigerians, a majority of Nigerians, no longer have discretionary income. There is no discretionary income to make purchasing decisions.
All right,
so
I'm afraid we have to. I'm afraid we'll have to leave you here now. Ayodele Adio, thank you so much. We have so much to talk about on a day like this concerning suicide and the causes and impacts and how we can go forward from here.
All right, so let's look at some of the headlines on the papers this morning. We have the Daily Times with us this morning, and it says here, China's sweet loans stoke debt trap warnings. China's sweet loans stoke debt trap warnings. That's on the front page of the Daily Times. And away from the Daily Times, we have the Leadership newspaper. For the Leadership newspaper, it says North Central Intelligentsia regroup in Abuja, form North Central People's Forum, and that's for the Leadership newspaper. And we also have the Daily Trust. 264 Nigerians commit suicide in 4 years, and that's in line with today being the World Suicide Day, Suicide Prevention Day rather. And the writer says depression, job losses, family crisis, top reasons. 800,000 die globally through self-murder, and that's coming from the WHO. COVID-19 fuels suicide cases in 2020, and government, parents, clerics key to ending suicide. And that's for the Daily Trust. To the Business Day now. Outrage as CBN gives 4 foreign firms nod to import maize, and that's for the Business Day. Next is the Blueprint newspaper, and it says fresh deal as striking doctors get 9 billion naira added allowances. Hopefully this will lead to the calling of the strike. We also have the National Economy, and it says PMB inaugurates committee to lead Nigeria's Agenda 2050. That's for the national economy. And then we have News Direct. And News Direct says subsidy removal, condensate private refineries to provide cheaper petrol. And that's coming from NNPC GMD. And that's all for the papers today. very different headlines this morning, but we'll look at the one coming from the national economy, talking about how the president has now inaugurated a committee to lead Nigeria's Agenda 2050. Of course, we have our guest ready to jump into this. Let me start with you, Dari, because we've had a lot of agendas before now. A lot of agenda before now. We've seen Agenda 2010, which was in the 1990s, launched by the military rule. And then we also have Agenda 2020, Vision 2020, which was an agenda to be part of the 20 top economies in the world when it comes to GDP. But today we're 27th. So what is the guarantee that this agenda is the very next thing for Nigeria?
Oh, you forgot the Millennium Development
Goals and now the SDGs as well, yes.
As we were turning into the new millennium, we were looking at the Millennium Development Goal, the 2010, now 2020. There's a gap now, 2050. That's 30 years.
30 years.
Well, I think before we begin to review the new assignment given to us by the government, which is the 2050, Agenda 2050, we need to take a look. I mean, before previewing that, we need to review the previous agenda. The 2020 agenda, what became of it? GDP, economy, infrastructure, and every other thing tied to it. How have we fared? If you ask me, without sounding apolitical, without attaching to any political party or past or present leadership, I want to say that as a country, we probably need to pay more attention more to how we achieve our agendas than the agenda themselves. Because it's just like we set out to do something without clear-cut modalities of how to get it done. I believe with the commitment of some of our past leaders to this agenda, if we had a clearer idea of what we wanted to do, we would have achieved more. But unfortunately, we have an agenda, then we keep having policies that runs contrary to that very agenda. And when you have such a situation, there will be conflict of policies, and at the end of the day, nothing will be achieved. Part of the 2020 agenda was the need to look at electricity, because there is nothing you will do about GDP without first taking care of
power infrastructure.
So it was key. Today, you will agree with me that we have not achieved.
So let's also take this conversation, and I agree that yes, electricity is still a challenge. But let's take this conversation to Ayodele. Let's look at the fact that this was the Vision 2020 was launched by former President Olusegun Obasanjo. But when you look at the administration of former President Goodluck Jonathan, he had a transformation agenda, and President Buhari went with the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan. So it looks like commitment and sustainability is also a challenge here.
I mean, clearly it is. Listen, we've never been short of laudable ideas. We've never been short of brilliant ideas that have been carefully designed on paper. The real problem is the discipline and the capacity to see those things through. If you think of a typical Olympian who is preparing for the next Olympics, they spend an average of 4 to 6 hours every day practicing for 4 years before they appear on the scene in the Olympics to perform optimally. The reverse is the case for the Nigerian government and what we've seen over the years. You postulate such beautiful goals and ambitions, dreams and vision, and then you lack the capacity, the commitment and the discipline to see through. And therein lies the real problem. So I'm not excited about the Vision 2050, which is 30 years ahead, when there is no clear plan as we speak to get us out of the woods in the next 2-3 years. Essentially, in the last decade, Nigerians have been very poorer. Income has not only stagnated, it is falling. The value of our currency has lost about 60%. Our purchasing power has dropped. Poverty has increased. Unemployment has increased. We've been unable to tackle our short-term problems. And then we're focused on a 30-year vision where we lack the capacity to implement. So what needs to happen before we put some of this vision into place is that we need to strengthen the capacity of the bureaucracy to be able to implement such visions. So if you have a bureaucracy that lacks the capacity to translate this vision into tactical action and steps on an everyday work plan, then we're just headed in no direction. If we also lack the discipline to pursue a deliberate policy, then it's also a wasted effort. You can imagine that in July, the CBN had restricted the importation or has restricted dollars for the importation of maize because they wanted to boost local production. Barely 2 months after, we've reversed that policy and given about 4 or 5 companies the right to import maize. What happened in 2 months? So the discipline to stick through to a particular policy proposal and see through to the end is a huge problem for us. And it happens consistently because, one, we do not do due diligence before we arrive at a particular policy. And even when we do due diligence to arrive at that policy, we lack the patience and the ability to build the capacity required to see that policy through. And when we even do have the capacity to see that policy through, we lack the discipline and the staying power and the commitment to follow through to a conclusive end.
All right.
And that's where we have found ourselves in.
All right, Ayodele Adio, thanks for sharing your thought with us in this regard. All right, so Dari, let's look at the idea of this National Agenda 2050. The idea is to lift 100 million Nigerians out of poverty within the next 10 years. But today, as it stands, we have 62% of the population still living on $2 per day. So what is the possibility that in the next 10 years, we have 100 million Nigerians? Bearing in mind that by 2050, the United Nations said will be over 400 million people. Yes.
Assuming that conceding that today we are about 200 million, and we agree that 62% are seriously below poverty rate today. That's to say that in the next 10 years, we want to bring more than half of Nigeria out of poverty. It is not something that is not doable, but the commitment, it's not going to be done by giving personal cash or direct empowerment to individual Nigerians. The number is still huge. So if the idea is empowering the Nigerians individually, we won't achieve much. Maybe at most, you bring 10,000 Nigerians out of poverty in 10 years. But if we fix the variables,
let's not forget that COVID-19 has seen more Nigerians even, this is even not the latest report, 2%.
So, victims, new victims of COVID-19 development are hardening to the figures of the problems we have. That's what I'm saying, that it is not going to be about empowering the individual. It's about fixing the variables, the factors that will quicken development, that will quicken the resourcefulness of the nation itself, thereby opening opportunities for the citizens. By the time you have a situation that helps your idea, your skill, your resourcefulness, more people will get out of poverty by doing what they know how to do and what they enjoy doing, other than waiting on government to come empower them, to come financially boost them. So if we are committed to this 2050 vision, and if we go about it the right way, block the loopholes where the rich continue to get richer, open opportunities for the poor, the vulnerable, and the average Nigerians to also be able to lift themselves, not waiting for government to lift them now, but lift themselves using the available resources and infrastructures made possible by government. And then we should also look at politics and administration of governance. Bring down the huge cost we push in these two directions. Make politics and governance less attractive, thereby forcing more people to invest. I want to tell you that a lot of people are investing in politics more than they are investing in businesses. So if we do this, we'll open the leeways and more people will become prosperous.
It's a lot of conversation to have, but the timeline for Vision 2020 is December. That's the end of that vision, and so we'll begin National Agenda 2050. So let's see how this pans out.
And by January, we'll start Vision 2050.
Pans out from next year. Dario Udufo-Wokon, thanks for talking to us.
It's a pleasure.